just a minute. Nobody's going to be excited to see you. I was like, wait, what? Why? Look at me. Look, I'm kicking ass now, man. And they're like, that's not what they remember. Just keep in mind, the last time they saw you, you were in handcuffs and wearing an orange jumpsuit. And I was like, oh, yeah.
And I'm glad that Zach reached out to have us connect on the podcast, being fathers, men who run their own businesses, etc. And I really want to talk to you about how someone goes through the concept of just thinking they're still a really good dad, that they love their children when they're suffering severely with addiction issues, even to the point of being in rehab.
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to here is a little bit of a story that you may have heard me share on the day that I got into rehab. The day after. I went in an afternoon. There was nothing going on, and I just had to spend the night there, kind of getting used to this whole idea. I was terrified, by the way. And the next morning, getting into group and just being so... I can't explain how terrified I was of this whole process. I was trying to keep my life stuck together with just the lies and the manipulation at the time that I was so caught up in this addiction. And, I'm trying to put on this persona like I'm a good dad, like I'm a good church going guy, like I've got 2 little babies and I'm keeping it all together. And clearly I was not. And my life was crumbling apart in many facets. And so I think that's just part of maybe where I was coming from. I'm putting out the persona and the image like I'm a good dad to many others. I'm trying to keep that ruse, that facade alive. So when I got into this first meeting, this first group, the therapist leading the group discussion said, okay, here's Justin. We did some introductions. There was a few different components and parts of that conversation that were interesting. And one of the things I said was, I've got 2 kids and I'm a good dad. I care for my kids. And I think that's really where you're coming from, Jesse, is that
yeah, I
did care. I wanted to believe that, but he really called me out in that moment and just said bullshit. And it sort of shocked me. And that was his style, to do some shocking. And that's what I needed. And he was a lifesaver for me. That man really helped me turn everything around. But in that moment, he just called me straight out on the carpet immediately without any hesitation, said, honestly, you think you can say something like that you're a good dad, where here you are, you've got trouble with the law, you've got addictions going on, and you cut the crap, man, deal with it. And that was the beginning. Day one, we jumped right in real strong, real hot and heavy. And that was the beginning of me beginning to face more of the reality and kind of merge these dualities of having one life that was very much in the shadows, very dark, very just not good in any respect. And this other that I tried to put on this facade of being a good dad and being present and, bringing those worlds together and realizing I am the same person and I have to own the choices that I've made. And if I do want to be a good dad, then I got to make different choices. And that was the main key to draw from that I was doing a big disservice to my kids, to myself, to my wife, so many people. But because I was trying to live this double life facade, I was convincing myself to some degree that, I'm still a good dad because I care. But I didn't. It wasn't, I don't know. Is that making any sense?
Yeah, no, it's making sense. Like you said, we want to have this mask on. Like you said, you were still going to church, doing family things, but you had this whole other life. And the mask thing, I think, is very real culturally. We never want to admit any faults. We don't want to ever discuss, when life isn't going grand, if we're not keeping up with the Joneses, etc. So what was the tipping point that actually made you decide to truly change your habits?
Well, in that setting, you may not be too familiar with this part of So I'd had two Russians with the law within just a couple of weeks of each other. Arrested. I was arrested twice and put in jail within a month, in the same month. And this second time it was kind of there, and there were drug charges, there were felony charges as a result of that. And so this second time, the lawyer who my family had just kind of pulled together a little bit of money from all my siblings and everybody to get a few $1,000. I think it was 4,000 or 5,000 to retain this guy. And he came down and said, well, if I get this and this, and he started laying out a strategy for what in his mind he was going to do to help try to get out of this situation. And he said, and if we are successful with this, and this, then maybe you're only going to go away for like 3 to 5 years. And I was just like, whoa, that's a win in your mind? Like that no. And I mean, that was terrifying. That's when it was like a 1, 2, 3, 4 punch all over the place. I was like, whoa, hold on. No, let's go back a little bit. If we get all these things done, so A, you're saying if we don't get all those things done, it could be longer. And B, I'm like, dude, I got a kid. I got 2 kids. I got one that's like a baby and one that's 2. Like I can't. And this just panic of a realization started to come over me that this isn't child's play. This isn't just a game. Mm-hmm. And I'm not just doing something to try to get a little buzz so I can go to work and make some sales. I'm seriously looking at long-term sentencing possible in a prison. Like, okay. And so that's when it really started to hit me. But like I said, when I went to the rehab, which was 2 weeks after that, probably, Jesse, because my family wasn't quick to bail me out the second time. I don't blame them, because the first time I did anything that I could to get out of jail, because it's terrible to be in there and be detoxing from these nasty, harsh chemicals. But then I'm back in there 2 or 3 weeks later and under the same kind of charges, same thing. And the attorney, part of the attorney's plan was get out of here. If I can get you out of jail and spring you from this directly into a rehab, then maybe I'll just try to push your trial. Every opportunity, I'll delay, I'll defer, I'll drag my feet and just try to come up with reasons that you can't go to court now, and just try to, because every time I get a continuance, it's usually 90 days, maybe more. So if we did that successfully 6 or 7 times, maybe you don't even go to court on this for 2 years. And if we can show that you have 2 years of being totally clean, totally above, like beyond reproach, maybe there's a chance. And so I'm like, all right, if you're telling me there's a chance, because that was it. That was all. Otherwise, I had all these strikes against me that you can't just erase. You can't make go away. So what sucked about the whole thing is, with this whole plan that was laid out, I could go 2.5, 3 years before trial and keep deferring and delaying, get all the way to trial, and it might not work. And then I get sentenced to go to prison. So that was hanging over my head the entire time. But despite all those pressures, going into that rehab, I still did not want to go. When my wife drove me up there, she picked me up from jail and drove me up to the rehab. And it was about a 2-hour drive. It was not a fun drive. Because it was very clear all the lies that I had been telling. And now I'm trying to figure out how to, before I would get my way through the situation through lies and just deceit and only telling half of the story, and try to come up with things. And it was just all out. And I was convinced, if she drops me off and I go into this place for an undetermined amount of time, she's not going to be there when I get out. You know, who would be? Like, what? My kids are going to be gone. Everything out. Mm-hmm. So I was just terrified to go in. I did not want to be there. I did not want to go in there. And I had all these, just the fears of it all. But then there's the addiction side of it all, that it's kind of like, well, in rehab, they teach you to give it a presence, kind of like a personality. They call it the beast. And you are supposed to draw it and give it names, and so you can talk to it, because it's like this alter ego. It's a different side of you. And that's part of some doctors' approach to training you to deal with this. And so at the time, I didn't have any of that training. But man, looking back with hindsight, my beast was rearing and flailing and going nuts on the way up to that rehab. And in the parking lot of the rehab, I'm pleading, I'm bawling. I'm pulling out every stop possible to keep me from going out of that car and into that rehab. It was insane. So, but even then, the next day, I'm like, yeah, I'm a good dad. So, because I thought that I did care about my kids. And that's the problem with these kinds of issues. You think in your head and in your heart, you're thinking like, I care for my kids. They are the most important priority. But yet, when you're given these choices, like right here and here, if you have to choose whether to stay with your kid or go get the drugs that you need to satisfy the addiction, you go satisfy the addiction. And that's part of in an addict's brain. It's just there's things that are miswired so that dichotomy, so that cognitive dissonance can live in the same brain. And I once read a book when I was in the midst of all this that I've thought about often since being more level-headed and clear-minded. And if you ask somebody I'm going to butcher this. It's been a long time since I've looked at it. If you ask somebody like, hey, do you want to do this? They'll say yes, no, maybe, I can later. But in the mind of an addict, if you ask them like, well, what do you think about your cocaine addiction? Like, do you think that's positive? No, man, it's not positive. It's not a good thing at all. I really need to quit. And I'm going to. Damn it. I'm going to quit. I'll never do that again. But I'll probably stop next week. But if I don't, it might be the week after, and I think I will. And that'll, like, there's this whole, it's just rambling on all this stuff because it makes space and cracks and wrinkles and crevices where that addiction can find a little bit of light of day and just be like, well, I was gonna, but I didn't. And remember, I did give a disclosure that I might need to wait until next week. So you create these weird wrinkles and layers in your brain because there's so much of us that knows putting heroin into our bodies multiple times every single day can't be good. I'm not a good husband, father, parent, human when I'm doing these things. But we also have to live with ourselves. And so you latch onto these beliefs like, well, I do care about my kids. So there's a redeeming quality, even though I'm going to go do all this stuff. But when you try to reconcile them, they are irreconcilable. And that's what you start to unpack in rehab and peel back the layers and get into, well, no, those two ideas cannot actually live in the same brain at the same time. You can't be a drug addict and be satisfying that addiction every hour or two and to be a good father. They are, in fact, diametrically opposed and totally at odds with one another.
I completely agree. I think if you surveyed everyone who is a parent, they're all going to say that they care about their kids. But then when you look at their actions or how they're even living out their own life, you can say, well, regardless of your addiction issues, you don't care about your kids.
Yeah.
So it's that thing that's easy for us to say. It's that mask of like, our identity is like, well, no, I'm a parent. So like, of course I care for my kids.
Naturally. Right.
Yeah. But then you have the parents, whether they're addicted to drugs, they're on antidepressants, SSRIs their entire life, but they're like, no, I care so much about my kids, but it's like they're not doing anything to actually change their life.
Yep.
To set the example, because it's actions that really demonstrate the care and love that we have for our children.
Right.
But
what do they see you doing? And that's the thing.
Yes.
And I'm grateful to all these chapters, like so grateful that this dark phase of my life was at a point where my kids were such babies that, hopefully the observations that were made were not lasting and didn't have as much of an impact as, their more moldable growing years where they're maturing and coming of age, where, and so many people are doing the same thing where it's just the same thing. And it seems so ridiculous to say it out loud that I thought I was a good parent, but like you just said, we're all doing that. We're all putting on a mask. We're all not looking at one department of our life. We all have a sacred cow somewhere, that we don't really want to change. We'll change everything but that. And for me, mine was a severe, bad, debilitating drug addiction that was not socially acceptable. It wasn't legally acceptable. Thank God, because that's what got me to get squared away. I mean, that's when I started to realize the cognitive dissonance in my head and how living that life and making those choices that were totally at odds with each other, but yet doing them from one moment to the next. I mean, that creates issues. That doesn't bode well for mental health. When you have a belief system that says you're going this way, but then all of your actions are going this way. It's like a constant fight in your head all the time. And then you're trying to raise kids, trying to pay the mortgage, trying to there's no room left for all that, which is part of the addiction. Part of that's what keeps us from actually making changes and improvements, is that there's no oxygen left in the room, so to speak, to do anything about it.
And then how was the relationship with your wife during all that time?
Very well. What period of time? Because there was this period of time that I was trying to keep everything under wraps and lie about it. And that was, it wasn't great, but she probably thought she was losing her mind because she'd see things that didn't make sense and I would just lie about it and she would trust me. Then there was this period of time that the cat was out of the bag, so to speak, and there was no more lies because I'm arrested twice now with drugs. And so it's okay, some of this stuff starts to add up to her and make sense. And then there was a period of time of healing and getting back together. And we're still married. Here we are almost 25 years in. And it's good. It's really good now. And we've had other ups and downs and things that we've worked through, but we've gone through that. And it's pretty remarkable. And she's remarkable too. That's probably one of the most common things I hear. You're still married? Same lady? Whoa. Damn, bless her heart, Yes. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I want to talk about the support that she had for you going through the rehab and to where you guys are now.
Okay.
Because like you said, you were like, if I go in there, she may just find somebody else.
I thought for sure she was gone.
Yeah. I could lose my wife. And I don't know about you. I'm a strong man of faith. I've my whole life been, I'm going to get married one time.
Mm-hmm. Same.
And it's lasting my lifetime, whether we pass, she passes, I pass, one of the two.
Yeah.
That's it. It's a one-time deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so the amount of love that I have for my wife, I've expressed on here. I never imagined that I could have for another human by any means. And so the fact that she was able to stick with you and support you through this, when you're like, no, if I go in there, she's leaving. She's turning around and she's driving, down to the gym to go find a guy who's in shape, got some shit together, and says, you want to take care of 2 kids with me.
Right.
Whatever the situation is.
And she totally could have. She is a 10 out of 10 and would have had no problem finding somebody else to fill that role. And I was so scared that not being there, and I didn't know how long I was going to go in, and she was just rightfully pissed at that time. But also trying to put on a layer of armor so that she could deal with me in the state that I was in, because normally she would deal with me in a state of love and kindness, and she's always helping and doing things for me. But she couldn't do that because that was enabling me to just find some crack in her armor, slip under there, and manipulate the situation again. So she really had to put on this stalwart sort of, I have to be a rock. I have to be strong and immovable, because there I was next to her just saying please don't leave. I mean, I'm begging, I'm pleading, I'm negotiating, I'm haggling, I'm trying to strike a deal. Jesse, I'm doing anything you could possibly conceive of to try to avoid going into that situation. And she had the balls to just sit there, listen to me and say, it's time to get out now. You have to go check in. And I don't know, man. I don't know if I could have done it. And now that I have adult kids that have gone through painful chapters here and there, it's hard to just say, well, this is the lesson that you need to learn. So go walk through that fire, go walk through that challenge. Now, I want to take the pain away. And I probably do that too much for my kids, but it's really hard. It's hard when you see them suffering and going through these tough life lessons to just sit back and say, okay, I'm going to try to support from afar and be here in case they come asking for things. I want to get in and be a fixer, man. I want to jump in there and help them solve the situation. No, if you go here and you can do this, and that's not what you need sometimes in life. So in my own situation, to have her there, it was and continues to be phenomenal that she had the wherewithal to do what was needed in that moment, and then to care enough to stick around and figure out how to patch it up after the fact too. Because after the fact wasn't pretty. When I got out of rehab 6 weeks later, she had sold the house, sold the cars, like liquidated everything right moments before it all being repossessed and foreclosed on and take, because I was a mess. And then we moved into my mother's house, and she had one little bedroom that was available for our 2 kids to share. And then my wife and I slept on the floor of the living room in my mom's house for almost a year from then on. And that was how we began to rebuild from there. So
when you're talking about the car ride, how she had to put on this armor, essentially you put her in a position of, she's not feeling safe and secure. So she has to take on this more masculine role. And she had to be the one who, like you said, get out of the car. You're going in. I've listened to you. It's not working this time.
Yep.
And I'm sure she had to keep on in that more, masculine role that normally, a woman naturally does not want to be in that sense of safety and security was still in her mind after the 6 weeks. And I guess, what was it that finally was that point where, so you said you lived with your mom for a year and rebuilding the relationship. What was it that you feel that you did as a husband, as a man, as your role in the relationship, where you felt that she could just be in her most feminine again and she feels safe and secure in your presence? Because, like, for me, I know that I've put my wife in situations early in our marriage where she's like, this does not feel good. Mm-hmm. And it was all on me. I could say whatever, use whatever excuse I wanted at the time, this or that, but in hindsight, it was 100% always me.
Yeah.
But I want to hear what it was that you felt that you did to earn back that trust and put her in that place where she just felt so in a good spot.
Yeah, it was. Well, thankfully, that's part of the rehab process that I went through. Is about 4 weeks in, and I'm starting to feel really good. The chemical part of it is really on the, it's behind me, and every day physiologically just felt better. Literally, I would wake up every day and this actually carried on for 9 months. I would wake up and think, man, I feel so much better today than when I woke up yesterday. Like, I continued to be just surprised. I'd wake up the next day and think, no way, it's even better today. Like, I got so excited by that for so long. And about 4 weeks in, I remember some of the training that we started to get in the rehab was, okay, now we're going to start talking about a day for you to get out of here. And I'm like, oh, that's going to be great. I'm going to go back and I'm going to see everybody. I'm going to see my kids. I'm going to see all, I'm so excited, and just right in there, like, just a minute. Nobody's going to be excited to see you. I was like, wait, what? Why? Look at me. Look, I'm kicking ass now, man. And they're like, that's not what they remember. Just keep in mind, the last time they saw you, you were in handcuffs and wearing an orange jumpsuit. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Hey, guys, really quick. I just wanted to take a second and thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here, and I just want to let you know that I have zero plans to ever run ads on this podcast. No interruptions, no distractions, just straight value for you. Now, if you're getting something out of this, the best way to support me is simple. Tell 2 friends about the podcast and leave a review. It helps me more than you know. And if you're looking for something even deeper, join my school community at school.com/ultimate husband, or just search High Value Life. It's for both men and women who want to level up in every area: marriage, leadership, mindset, everything. I hope to see you there.
Shit, that felt like forever ago, right? I'm a whole new man now. I'm a different guy. So part of that, luckily, was a tempering of my expectations and just a consideration that keep in mind what you did to the people on the outside for years leading up to this moment. And now you're going to go back and get into that. So luckily, I did have that in mind. I guess the quick and easy way to say that is they really people wanted to get even, and that's the normal human condition. They kind of want a little bit of retribution, a little bit of you cost me, and so I was ready for that to the extent that I could be. I mean, at least they taught me how to consider that point of view, and that I needed to be patient to earn that back over a long period of time. Um, I I'm pretty sure that they said to plan on about a similar amount of time. If you've been lying and doing this stuff for 2 years, get ready for a 2 year sort of. It's not going to take 2 years, but it might. You're going to kind of it'll have a hockey stick sort of. There'll be a curve. You need to get used to the curve idea, and that was true. It was very true. I'm coming out of there feeling like I'm all strong and happy and healthy and ready to go, and everybody was just suspicious. Like, wait, are you on drugs? You seem too happy. I'm like, what? So there was a lot of that. So I'm like, yeah, fair enough. I'll give it to you because it was me for so long. So it was about, all in all, I mean, things started to get better after 90 days. The first 90 days were really hard out of there. And again, being on my mom's floor didn't help. Having nothing to our name financially, like no money, nothing, like those things didn't help because I was not providing. But one of the lessons that I learned in rehab was, and again, I'm like, I'm a good dad. I'll go do anything that I need to support my family. I'll work at McDonald's and flip burgers if that's the case. And that same man who called me out, we called him Dr. Bob. He pointed out to me that if I were to go take on something that felt meaningless to me, like a McDonald's job, for instance, or a sales job that I had before, which is where kind of helped get me into this mess, that I would be right back in the same boat again. And so he would say things like, okay, I'll see you in a couple of weeks. I'm like, no, you won't. I try to get, they say, you're not learning enough about yourself, because one of the key reasons that you're doing drugs is because you're not fulfilling your capabilities and what you know that you can do. So until you go out and learn how to satisfy these things in a healthy way, how to work towards something, to progress, you're going to always try to fill that void with something to numb it. And if you're not going to learn that lesson here, then yep, I'll see you back here in a few weeks. So back to the wife. After about 90 days, things started to get a little better. There were some tough moments in there, for sure. And then I think one of the biggest turning points, kind of a miracle that took place, is I could just tell after a lot of stress. I don't know if this was, I don't know the exact time frame, but we've slept on the floor for a long time. I'm not providing. I'm working on a business that's making $0. It's 6-8 months since this, and nothing has changed financially. But I'm trying to stay true to this. I have to work on something and show myself whether or not I'm capable of this.
Yeah.
So I'm working away at it without any fruits of that work yet showing up. And I could just tell the relationship was under such pressure because of my mom and no money, and my mom even paying for our groceries, and my wife working at Walmart bagging things for other people, and my kids, just the whole thing was so rough. And I knew we had to get out of that situation. So just living under that same roof, I had to get space. In order to kind of go to the next level of healing and trying to put things back together, but we didn't have anything. So I wanted to figure out a way to do that. I'm a big believer. I'm a man of faith. I'm definitely believe in manifesting and attracting things into my life. So I just knew this was a necessity. I knew I wasn't going to get what I needed where I was. And so I jumped in a car with a guy who was going up north to see people. I said, I want to come with you. I want to meet with people. I got to figure out how to live somewhere else. And through just a string of miracles over the next maybe 2 weeks, we found somebody who was a speculator in real estate, had a few homes that they were sitting on and they were going to turn over and flip. One of them was empty. It was like 8,000 square feet. It was this nice big house. And he needed some help with something that I was working on in my business. And I said, oh, I'll help you. I'll do that for free, maybe in exchange for living in your house. He's like, that'd be great, because I want somebody in that house. I don't want it to get vandalized. I can't be up there. So we moved into a house for free. We had to pay the power bill, And that was about it. This sweet house. There was no drapes or curtains on the windows, like just being in a fishbowl, everybody could see in. My wife got to work like sewing them, and she made the curtains for the windows that had this house now that had curtains that she made. And that's where that's when things started to really transform in our relationship, when we got back to our own space by the grace of God, though. It was the only way that was possible.
Yeah, and in that example, you guys are building something together. You guys are building a home. You found a house. She's
Yeah,
turning it into a home.
totally. Yep.
Using those feminine instincts of hers. Going into a
Sure.
nesting period,
Yep.
and you guys working together and being yoked. I mean, I love those kind of stories.
Yeah. And it was after, like, you're exactly right. She started making that place more of a home. Our kids are now, they're starting to grow. We got pregnant. It was a little while later in the situation, but got pregnant with our third child there in that home. And, things with the business started to work well. And then, yeah, just as we got into I like how you said that, as she got into her nesting phase and some of her natural tendencies and abilities kind of came out, that helped support me in mine. And the success started to come in, and we started to create results professionally, personally, in our home, in our relationship, in our marriage, adding another child. Like, things just started to pop off, and it started to go, like, that's where the hockey stick part of it really came in. So that was a year. The first even 3 to 6 months, it was still a challenge in that home, but at least we had that home. We had a space that she could have her value and be in her role, and there was me and mine, and we continued to figure out how to come back together. And so the doctors were pretty spot on. It did take between a year and two to really kind of get back to where we felt pretty solid again.
And I believe that you guys being in that house is a great example of a phrase that I often tell men, that a woman will multiply your efforts.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
I totally agree with that. I do. And it's not in a way that you can easily just grab a yardstick and measure. It's not as though it's not the way it sounds. It's not like just because she is there supporting me that she's coming into the office and helping me take things off of my plate. But no, there's some I don't even know the word. Like, it's exactly what you're saying, though. If it's this, I keep this on my desk because this is so much of this philosophy. I believe that without one of them, then it just looks funky. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Yeah.
And you need the two halves to make a whole. And when we're both in our lane and supporting one another, then so much more can happen as a result of that. And those efforts are multiplied. And Jesse, as far as the results that I started to see, that we both started to see as a family, from the business that I was working on to our family, and reconnecting with my siblings and their kids and cousins, and just everything kind of just coming together and fitting in. It really was just a miracle after miracle after miracle. So I totally agree with that concept, that as she was there to support me, and we started to figure out how to forgive and move on and move forward and offer the recompense, or the pay my due for what I had put her through.
Mm-hmm.
Man, things just shot off from there, and it was super fun and exciting.
So now you have your business is up and running, this business that you were working on, from mom's living room floor.
Yep.
You're in the house. You guys are rekindling your relationship in a number of ways. Let's go back to now. How are you fostering truly caring about your kids and being a great father?
That was a challenge. And it's also something that I learned in rehab, a different mindset, that being, well, it was again Dr. Bob who kind of told me that, do you think it's a bad because part of what I was, my mindset is going in almost losing everything that was the most important to me. Is my mindset again on day one is I'll go flip hamburgers and do whatever so I can be there for my kids. And it was learning that that's not necessarily the best thing to support my kids. And maybe it's not such a bad thing after all to show my kids and be an example of hard work, be an example of winning, be an example of putting your head down and staying focused in one path until you get an outcome, until you see results, and to learn from the results that you're getting, and just living your life and listening to the beat of the drum that you hear in your head. And that's a pretty good example to give to your kids and a pretty good thing to demonstrate for them. And so I went a lot in on work. I felt like I had a chip on my shoulder and I needed to prove something to myself that I could provide. And that began to work for us. We started to see some good results financially. And I just tried to keep in mind that even if I wasn't at home all of the time, that I'm still working towards setting the right example and being a good father. And so, I tried, not perfectly, but just always tried to keep good balance in that. So, but I worked a lot, especially after getting into that house. From there, for the next 6 or 8 months, it was a lot of hours worked, and I was wearing every single hat for the business. I'm doing accounting, and at the time, I have no background in that. So that was a Sunday afternoon thing. I'd go to church. I would take the kids. We'd be together. They'd go down for a nap in the afternoon, and I would go to the office, and I would try to sit there and figure out how to do QuickBooks. And that's where I'd try to send invoices and different things. And then I would try to come back and be present with them. And I'd, again, try to be there for every day. I had several routines that were kind of part of my life at that time. Every day we'd sit together in a green chair. We had a green chair in my bedroom, and I'd have each kid on the side of me, and we'd get ready for bed and watch a little TV show, read some stories, read some books, and then I would tuck them in. So that was one of my routines, to be there every night for bedtime. And my wife was great at getting them to bed at a good time. They would always go to bed at 7. That was funny because in the summer, 7, it's very light.
Yep.
And they're like, "Mommy, how come it's so light outside?" And it's like, well, this is when everybody goes to bed. And now they're realizing not everybody went to bed at 7. How come we always did? That sucks. She was really good at that, which gave us sanity and time to have. So I would have that time with the kids, finish up the day with them, and then get them to bed. And then she and I would have time that we could connect and communicate and talk and work through the things, keep her posted on the things that I was working on, and things are going on at the office, things are going on in the family, things are going on in the home. So just some time for us to say it's just scheduling those routines in a way that there is balance and they don't just get left by the wayside, I guess.
Yeah, and Zach sent me another video of yours where you were discussing, working your ass off and demonstrating to your children, it's 7 a.m. I've already been working for 2.5 hours. They're barely dragging themselves out of bed.
Yeah.
And maybe however many hours later, they see I'm working, but I also have the ability to go to their baseball practice. I also have the ability to be at all of their games.
Yes.
I think that oftentimes in American culture, and maybe social media is different in this, but generally the United States culture, it's like you have a 9 to 5 and it's all you can ever do, regardless if it's entry level or high executive corporate. It's like you can't change anything. Like it's just your life is your life. You're working 40, 50 hours a week for somebody else.
No.
You work for yourself. I work for myself. And I truly believe that if we're willing to take the risk, like you were, we can create a life with that abundance to be with our children and still demonstrate, providing financially and the work that needs to be
100%.
put into it. I want to hear you touch on that part a little bit more.
Okay. Yeah. You said, there's this 9 to 5 that most of us feel like, especially in this culture, that's what it is. That's what we're going to work either for ourselves or for somebody else. And I know people that work for themselves that still are just blocked from that 9 to 5 and it's almost a non-negotiable for them. Mm-hmm. What about 5 to 9 and then 5 to 9? You got two of these blocks of 5 to 9 that sandwich the 9 to 5. That's what's important to me, because it's the 9 to 5 that is, and in my life now, they seem to get blocked up with meetings and team things and reviewing payroll, or whatever the case may be. But the 5 to 9, I control. That's a time that I can get things done. So if I know my kids are going to, and this comes down to, I started it then in that home and started to realize that for me to be present, now my kids were little at the time, so the things that I needed to be present for were, it was years later before even like Little League or something showed up. So as they get older and older, there's more of these commitments of time and things that I want to be present for. But that began the process of me realizing, if I'm going to be available for that, then I need to get some stuff done earlier in the day. So I'm not missing out on anything except a little bit of sleep if I get up at 5 to do these tasks, and then I can be done by this time when they wake up and have breakfast with them. So I started to see things a little differently through a different lens. And that's where I started thinking about this 5 to 9 block. And then I realized I have a 5 to 9 block at the end of the day too. And so part of that block is me spending some quality time with my kids, with my wife. Another one is spending some quality time with me. So I had a routine. Every Sunday I would go to a movie by myself. Every Sunday night was my routine. And there's a lot of people that just thought that was super weird. But for me, I left the house after the kids were in bed. So I'd always stick through that ritual of getting them to bed and being present for every single bedtime. And then I'd go to the movie and I could fill up my own cup a little bit and just get a little distance from everything and be a little bit more present. So having those, looking for opportunities. Yes, I think, Jesse, that you can create the abundance. As you were saying that, I'm just thinking, you've got to want it, though. You've got to, because sometimes you got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and work until 9 a.m. and then go to your job and then work from 9 to 5.
And it's easy to not want it.
Yeah, it's easy to feel that time bitching about something else instead. So if you want to get up and you want to put the work in, you get the reps done before anybody else is out of bed, I think that's a great lesson to leave your kids. I think you're going to create more abundance and opportunity in your life to be with your kids. And, I worked a lot during those years, but it gave me the opportunity to be there for every bedtime. And when I would travel, I remember our third child was, when he was born, I was in LA. She was in northern Utah. And I was going down for a company Christmas party for an office that we had down there. And I had a couple meetings with other people for this trip. And I was only going to be gone for a day or two. And she called after I had just made it to the hotel saying that she was going into labor. And I was like, okay, go sit in the green chair and just be peaceful, be calm, don't do anything. I can't get home because it's midnight and I just landed and there's no flights until tomorrow. So I'll get on the first plane. Having that flexibility, I was there, I made it for the delivery and everything was cool. But I had that flexibility to do that and the abundance to be there. And it's just like, it seems like when I'm, like, those opportunities are possible if you're there putting in the reps, if you're there getting up and getting the work done, and if you're focused on what really matters most and you're working towards it instead of just griping or complaining about not having what matters most, then I do believe you can, you get, I think it's God's grace that you get. Like in that case, I mean, labor was just stayed for 24 hours. So I could get home, pick her up, take her to the hospital, and then we had a baby together. And that was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. And the me time is important. I think too many men don't do the me time in a place where it doesn't impact the family dynamic. Like you were saying, kids are already in bed. Sunday night, I go to a movie. Our routine, their routine is not impacted.
Correct.
Mine, I'm up at 4 a.m. I have breakfast, and me and my dog go do 3 miles. My kids and wife, they're not up. They don't know what's going on.
Yeah. You're not taking time away from anybody to do that. And they're like, I need some time for me. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And I, for me, that early morning and when it's dark and I do that, I just love it. It is my little mini vacations.
Yep.
It is just so nice. And the days that I don't do it, one, my dog, he's a little restless, but two, I just don't, it just doesn't feel good. If I
Yeah. Yeah.
ever have missed those, I'm like, man, this just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that. I like that. And I do this. I do the same thing. In I don't have a dog, and I don't go running in the morning, but I get up and I do some exercise, and it's really finding those things that you need to do for yourself. And sometimes, now that my kids are older, my youngest is 14, and my wife and I have developed a pattern of every quarter we will go away for 2 or 3 days, and every year usually we'll go away for 5 or 6, so that we can have time out of our environment with the normal stimuli and the normal noises, sounds, responsibilities, all the things that are going on that just trigger the normal life that we live, so that we can think about our goals, so that we can think about what we want to accomplish, so we can think about the kind of parents that we want to show up to be. And these are awesome retreats that just get us out of the matrix, so to speak. We get out and we get to go reconnect. We focus only on, and sometimes we go to fun places, and other times we just deliberately, we're going somewhere in a few weeks. And the goal was not to go somewhere too fun, because we didn't want distractions from the outside world. We want to really just be in the hotel room and be in the hot tub and be looking at our notes and our goals, and not have the distractions of wanting to go out to dinner, wanting to go to a show, we want to just have some downtime for a few days. So, and now at a different chapter and stage of our kids' lives, that makes sense to do, because now it gives them some autonomy to, can they keep track of, last time we did it, we're trying to get everything ready to go, and it's one of our longer ones because it's the end of the year, and we're getting all the food ready and trying to say, hey, do you have this? Do you have this? And my 14-year-old goes, Dad, it's not our first time. We got this, bro. You can leave.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm thinking, this is great, because 2 years ago, a year ago even, we were getting ready to go, and there was a little bit of a sense of panic, like, well, how can we get a hold of you, and how far away will you be, and who should we call if something goes wrong? And now it's, yeah, and something did go wrong. I remember one of those times that he bit into something and a tooth cracked, and luckily we have a dentist nearby that was able to, we could make this arrangement. And now he's like, bro, chill, I got this, you can leave. So it's good. It's good. And I just think that's part of, when you have the husband and wife, and you have a man and a woman, like you said, that we can support each other, they do multiply your efforts, and they, like, we together can do so much more when we get on the same page. And I just, it's such a great relationship to put everything. The return on investment is huge. And there's been times in my life that I haven't invested into it. And man, what a jackass, because it's, and I would encourage anybody who's hearing this, like, younger versions of me, invest, make good, wise choices in who you want to spend time with, and then pour into them. And it's a great ROI.
Totally agree. Earlier, you had mentioned how your children, they'll go through different obstacles of their own. Do you ever use your experience that we were originally talking about as an example of how to overcome adversity, and use it for the benefit of them overcoming adversity through their own suffering?
That's one that's been a tough one for me. And I'll tell you why. I started making some of these choices when I was 16, 17 years old, and getting into drinking and some drugs and different things like that recreationally. And I think the reason is I just saw my older siblings doing that sometimes. And so I felt like that's what you do, and it's not, I don't even really remember consciously thinking that, other than just observing, oh, he's got cigarettes in his pocket that just fell out. And so I just, my 7-year-old self recorded that and remembered that. And then different things fell out of his pocket that were green and smelled funny. And I'm like, okay. And then I just remembered that and recorded that. When I became a similar age, I just thought that's kind of the things that we do. That's what you should do to be a big grown-up kid like that. So on the one hand, because of my experiences, I didn't talk a lot about that with my kids until just recently. And I didn't want my kids to think that that's something that you just do. And hey, dad did it. What's the big deal? I'm going to do it. Now, some of them have gone through some similar patterns in some respects, and they're all doing very well. So it's good now to be a little bit more forthcoming and to have these things a little bit more out there, because I do think there's some great learning lessons from this. And I think the other reason that I'm challenged by this, one of the drivers for me, that I had a great childhood, awesome parents, awesome family, just a lot of love, a lot of connection, a lot of fun times. Not a lot of stuff. We didn't have. I'm the last of 9 kids. We didn't have fancy vacations. Really, our vacations usually were in a tent, in the mountains or something, which was
That's
awesome.
a lot of plane tickets.
Yeah.
9 kids.
Exactly. I didn't go on a plane until I was 10 years old, I think, once for my sister's wedding, and I was just so pumped about it. So we didn't do that kind of stuff. We didn't have those kinds of means. Mm-hmm. And I always wanted my kids when I was a young person, when I was a teenager. I was just convinced, and it probably came from stupid things that you get from, going to high school and middle school. And I didn't have all the designer clothes. I didn't have an unlimited budget. And I saw people that did. They had new clothes on every single day for 30 first days of school. And I'm like, wow. And I got not that kind of a budget to spend. So I always wanted to give my kids more, like I'm never going to tell my kids we can't afford it. And now that I have a little seasoning and a little age on life, I think that's probably one of the greatest gifts and blessings that my parents gave me, because it gave me a drive and determination to solve problems on my own. Like to have a drive and a reason to go out and to find and fight for and to build something different to get the results that I wanted. And so when you ask me about, do I use my experience to help my kids? I sure try, but damn, I've made a lot of mistakes in that. And sometimes I haven't let them fight for their own things well enough, because I really want to get in there and try to help them solve the problems. And I'm learning more and more and more just what a disservice that does for them by not giving them that opportunity to face a problem, feel the uncertainty and the discomfort of that problem, look around and survey the opportunities and problem solve and get a solution to, and then conquer a problem. And something that I mentioned, a concept that I've been kind of thinking lately is, without the risk of failure, you really don't ever get the sense or the thrill of a win or victory. So if you can't really lose, and I think I'm coming to that because there's been a safety net that I've put under some of the kids so much that, well, if this doesn't happen, then I'll help you figure out that or that. And without the sense of loss or losing something, can you really ever win? I don't know.
So I guess I probably should have reworded that, because I'm in complete agreement. I even recently made a video on how we need to let our children suffer and how our brain thrives on overcoming adversity.
Yeah.
So I guess if I were to reframe my original question is, if you were to give someone advice on, hey, do you as a parent want to be the first person to talk to your child about drug or alcohol because you had drugs or alcohol because of the experiences you had, or would you rather the first person they hear from it is a kid in the locker room?
Oh, yeah.
I guess maybe that, of like how it's like, do you use your experience to be like, hey, bud, I did this happened to me. Mm-hmm. I was in the gutter. Yeah. And here's what I did to climb to the top of the mountain. But again, I can't fight that battle for you. But here's dad's experience. Versus the kid in the locker room, he was like, hey, I found this in my dad's sock drawer.
Right. Yeah. I would much rather be the one to share that. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been one to share that early on, and I've been the one, because I have this wide gap of kids, and I have kids that I wasn't the one to share that with, and I've seen how that's gone differently. So I think by being able to share those examples and being forthright and forthcoming during these tough teenage years that kids are trying to figure out who they are, who their tribe is, where they fit in, how they can connect with people, that connecting over substances just because they do the same one is not a real tribe. That's not real value.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep.
And I've seen um, in families that I've close to, when their family members or parents have addiction issues, and it's something that is unspoken of, or that it's that they hide from their children,
Mm,
and then their children come to realize, like, all these years it was this, and how even at a young age at one point they're like, this is probably my fault,
mm,
because it
yeah.
was just something that
Yeesh.
was never spoke of. It was like
Yeah.
it was hidden, and then they find out that their parents doing, and then it's like, whoa, that has to be pretty gnarly at 13, when you realize that they're taking this or that, and you
Yeah,
think
man.
it's because of you,
Because of you, right?
and you accidentally found it.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Um,
That could be hardcore, and that that's what's so tough about rearing kids is
mhm.
there's my wife was just here and we were having a meeting and going through. We get together every week and go through things, and that's the biggest thing that we talk about is our kids and how they're processing things and how they're doing things. And we've definitely done things on both sides of the spectrum of being, like I said, disclosing and talking more about it, and then not, and seeing what those results are. And you don't know how these kids are going to process things. That's what's weird. You never think that because they find something that they're going to assume it's their fault, but you don't know. Like this is a different. Their minds are just growing and developing, and you don't know what something. It's like Tony Robbins says, like there's really only three choices that you have, and it's what to focus on, what meaning you give it, and then what are you going to do about it. That's the only three things that ever matter. So I can
Mhm.
focus on this pen or I can focus on this bottle. Then I'm going to give it a meaning. If it has a meaning or is not very much of a meaning, and then what am I going to do about it? Am I going to write a note or am I going to take a drink or whatever? And kids finding these different things or dealing with weird nuances in the home, or yeah, who knows which way it could go. And it's best to just lead out with that and to share and to talk about it. Absolutely.
I love it. Yeah, I agree. I want you to tell everybody what your business is and what you do.
Yeah. So thanks. I'd love to. We are Propel Business Enterprises. We help people with a lot of admin stuff. We do a lot of coaching and mindset work. Um, my journey after that home that I was talking about, we I got into a business that business took off. I had somebody that I brought into my world to help me navigate issues like payroll and accounting, QuickBooks that I didn't really know how to do, like I shared. I ended up taking quite like everything that business created and ran off with it and took it all. I spent almost 5 years, four and some change, litigating with just trying to prove that I didn't take the money and hide it, and that I didn't pay. There was no taxes paid on. I mean, just this whole mess. We got into this major battle, and all these areas in my life that I didn't have any strengths or competencies in, that I just kind of deferred and gave to somebody else. I had to now learn and deal with and fight through for the next 4 years. Through that process, we started helping people that were friends that would say, "Hey, I want to start a business. Can you help me do payroll? Because I don't really know how to do it." So we kind of accidentally got into that sort of business. And now, in hindsight, after doing that for over 10 years now, I'm helping a lot of people just kind of stay in their sweet spot, Jesse, to where entrepreneurs start a business because they like to make something, solve a problem, provide a service, whatever it is. We've tried to help them stay in their lane and then take some of the red tape stuff off of their plate. Um, and again, with hindsight, now I've got these different chapters of my life that I've kind of learned that you can't just give everything to somebody else because that's not healthy or safe. You can't, like in rehab, I really learned about systems. You can't just mindset, white knuckle, hope your way through it. I needed systems to beat an addiction. I needed systems to learn how to deal with people that were going to come treat me poorly after I was healthy, and not how to trigger that back into a relapse situation. So I learned a lot about systems and things there. And then mindset is a big part of it, and having faith and having the right frame to view things, but they really need to come together so that you can develop your mindset and your systems and learn how to delegate effectively while still maintaining how things work, and continuing to grow and level up. So what we do now is primarily just deal with coaching and consulting. We've just recently, I'm kind of excited about this, just recently separated our bookkeeping and our accounting and our admin services from our core coaching. So right now we just deal with entrepreneurs and small business owners and founders that are dealing with people that run into challenges. Is kind of where they're hitting their head against a ceiling of either they're not growing, or it's just their job or their passion, their business has kind of become a bit of a grind. And we deal with startup people too that are also looking to start and not really sure how to start in a business to get those three pillars kind of established and solid.
Gotcha. Right on. And so where do people find you?
Propelyour.com is our website. And Instagram's probably the easiest one. We have videos that we put up there every day, and I DM with people there all day long, every day as well. And it's Justin Lund on Instagram. So come find us there, and if there's anything we can do to help, that me, my team, we're here.
All right. Any last words?
I don't know. It's been good. It's been good. I was on the verge of about breaking down a few times, so I'm glad I didn't totally lose it. And I've appreciated the conversation. It's been good.
I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time. I'm glad we were able to finally do this because, like I said, we've crossed paths a half dozen times.
Yeah, same.
Different calls, and I'm glad we were able to jump on one together.
Yeah, likewise. I look forward to more of it. I think we can do it again.
Yeah, we're gonna do this again.
Awesome.